The sky above New York City turned dark at noon. It was not clouds. It was not an eclipse. It was a ship so massive that it blocked the sun and cast a shadow over the entire eastern coast of the United States. People stopped in the streets. Cars crashed into each other as drivers looked up. Children pointed and screamed. The elderly fell to their knees and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. The ship was not made of metal like human vessels. It seemed to be alive, breathing, pulsing with colors that human eyes could not properly see. It hung in the sky like a mountain that had forgotten how to fall, and from its belly, a smaller craft descended toward the United Nations building. Inside the General Assembly Hall, the world's leaders had gathered in emergency session. Presidents, prime ministers, kings, and generals sat in their designated seats, their faces pale with fear they tried to hide. Armed guards lined every wall, though everyone knew their weapons would be useless against whatever was coming. The doors of the assembly hall did not open. They simply ceased to exist, replaced by a glowing portal through which stepped the most terrifying creature any human had ever seen. Ambassador Vorik stood 12 feet tall. His body was covered in scales that looked like shattered glass, each piece reflecting light in a different direction. He had 6 eyes arranged in a circle around his head, and each eye moved independently, watching everything and everyone at once. His mouth was a vertical slit filled with teeth that seemed to go back forever. When he spoke, his voice did not come from his mouth but from everywhere at once. "People of Earth," Vorik announced, and every translation device in the room somehow understood his words perfectly. "The Galactic Council has observed your species for 300 of your years. We have watched you develop. We have watched you fight. We have watched you spread across your tiny planet like a disease spreads across a body." The room was completely silent. No one dared to breathe loudly. "You have been judged," Vorik continued. "Your species is violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. The Council has decided that you must be contained before you develop the technology to leave your solar system and infect the rest of the galaxy with your chaos." Psst, the Secretary General. A thin woman from Sweden named Ingrid Holm stood on shaking legs. "What does contained mean?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Vorik's 6 eyes all turned to focus on her, and she nearly fainted from the pressure of that gaze. "It means your planet will become a prison. Your species will never leave. Your technology will be reduced to pre-industrial levels. You will farm and fish and hunt, and you will do so forever, watched by our guardians until your son dies." The assembly erupted. Generals shouted threats. Scientists tried to propose alternatives. Politicians argued about negotiation and diplomacy. The noise rose to a deafening level until Vorik raised one massive hand, and suddenly no one could make a sound. "You have 30 cycles, 30 of your days, to accept this judgment. If you resist, we will deploy the Valorian elite. They are warriors who have been engineered for 10,000 years to be perfect killing machines. They have conquered 600 worlds. They have ended 37 species who chose to fight. No army has ever defeated them. No weapon has ever harmed them. They are death made flesh." He lowered his hand, and sound returned to the room. "Choose wisely, humans. Your survival depends on your obedience." In the chaos that followed, no one noticed an old man sitting in the very back row of the observer section. His name was Beek Dury, and he had been a diplomat for 40 years before his retirement. He had been invited to this session as a courtesy, a recognition of his long service. He was 70 years old, with white hair and a face full of wrinkles, and he had spent his entire career studying every treaty, every law, every agreement that humanity had ever made with itself. But Beek Dury had also spent the last 20 years studying something else. When the first signals from deep space were detected in 2031, the governments of the world had kept it secret. They had translated the signals and discovered they contained laws, galactic laws, rules that governed the behavior of species in the wider universe. Dury had been given access to these laws. He had memorized them. He had found their weaknesses. Now, as the world's leaders panicked and shouted, Dury raised his weathered hand. "Ambassador Vorik," he said, and his voice was so calm, so steady, that it cut through the noise like a knife through water. "I invoke Article 7, Section 12 of the Galactic Compact." The room fell silent again, but this time it was not Vorik's doing. Everyone turned to look at the old man who had dared to speak. Vorik's eyes, Nerdal, 6 of them moving together for the first time. You know our laws? I do, Duri replied. Article 7, Section 12 states that any species facing judgment may demand trial by combat. A single champion may be nominated to face the accuser's warriors. If the champion wins, the judgment is void. The species goes free. Vorik was silent for a long moment. Around him, the air seemed to grow colder. You would stake your entire civilization on one warrior. I would. Your species has no genetic modifications. No combat implants. No warrior casts bread for battle. Your soldiers are soft, weak, limited by your primitive biology. What champion could you possibly send against the Valorian elite? Duri smiled, a small, tired smile that had seen too much of the universe to be afraid anymore. That is our concern, not yours. Do you accept the challenge, or does the Galactic Council fear a single human? The insult hung in the air. Vorik's scales shifted colors, rippling with what might have been anger or might have been amusement. Very well, human, accept. You will send one champion. We will send 5 Valorian elite, the minimum required for a formal execution. The combat will take place in 30 days, in an arena of our construction. The galaxy will watch. And when your champion falls, as they surely will, your planet will fall with them. He turned and walked back toward the portal. Choose your champion wisely, humans. It is the last choice you will ever make. The portal closed behind him, and the doors of the assembly hall reappeared as if they had never been gone. Duri remained standing, while everyone else collapsed into their seats. He had bought humanity 30 days and one chance. One single chance to find someone who could do the impossible, defeat 5 warriors, who had never known defeat. He had no idea who that someone might be, but he knew with a certainty that came from a lifetime of negotiation that such a person existed. Humanity had always produced such people when it needed them most. The question was whether they could find them in time. The testing facility was built in 3 days. It occupied an entire military base in Nevada, and it contained the most advanced equipment humanity had ever created. Machines that could measure reaction time down to the millisecond. Sensors that could track every muscle fiber in the human body. Computers that could predict how a person would move before they moved. Colonel Yunhana stood at the center of it all. Watching candidate after candidate fail, she had been chosen to lead the selection process because she was the best strategic mind in the South Korean military. And because she had spent her entire career studying how humans fight, she understood combat in ways that most people could not imagine. She knew that winning was not always about strength or speed. Sometimes it was about something else entirely, something that could not be measured by machines, but so far. Every candidate had been a failure. The Special Forces soldiers were impressive. They could kill a man in 17 different ways with their bare hands. They could shoot a target from 2 kilometers away. They could survive in any environment, fight through any pain, complete any mission. But when Hannah ran simulations of their abilities against the projected capabilities of the Valorian elite, they died within seconds. Every single time, the Olympic athletes were fast and strong. World record holders in every category. The finest physical specimens humanity had produced. But speed and strength meant nothing against warriors who could move faster than the eye could see, could punch through steel with their bare fists. The martial arts masters were skilled beyond belief. Fighters who had trained for decades in ancient arts passed down through generations. But their techniques were designed to fight other humans. They had no answer for creatures that did not move like humans, did not think like humans, did not feel pain like humans. After 2 weeks, Hannah had tested over 3,000 candidates. None of them had passed. She sat in her office at midnight, surrounded by reports and projections and failure after failure. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. Her eyes burned from staring at screens. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice whispered that humanity was going to die because she could not find the right person, her assistant. A young lieutenant named Park Jinu knocked on her door. He looked excited, which was strange because no one had looked excited in weeks. "Ma'am, you need to see something." Hannah did not have the energy to be curious, but she followed him anyway. He led her to a small room filled with screens, where a team of analysts were reviewing footage from around the world. They had been searching everywhere, every security camera, every phone recording, every piece of video evidence they could find, looking for anyone who displayed unusual abilities. "We found something," Jinyu said. In South Korea, a small village called Hadong played the footage on the main screen. The video showed a rice paddy at dawn. The morning mist hung low over the water, and the mountains in the background were barely visible through the fog. An old man was working in the field, bending and rising in the eternal rhythm of planting rice. He wore simple clothes, a white shirt, dark pants, a wide hat to protect him from the sun. His movements were slow and careful, the movements of someone who had done this same task thousands of times. "I don't understand," Hannah said. "He's just farming. Keep watching." From the tree line at the edge of the paddy, something moved. A wild boar, huge, easily 400 pounds, with tusks like curved daggers. It burst from the trees at full speed, charging directly at the old man. Hannah leaned forward. Wild boar attacks were deadly. The creatures could kill a grown man in seconds. She expected to see the old man run, or fall, or die. None of those things happened. The old man did not seem to notice the boar until it was almost upon him. Then, without any appearance of hurrying, he stepped to the side. His hand touched the boar's head as it passed a gentle touch, like a man guiding water through a channel. The boar's momentum carried it forward, but somehow it was now moving in a different direction. It crashed into the soft mud of the paddy, rolled twice, and lay still. The old man looked at it for a moment, shook his head as if mildly annoyed, and went back to planting rice. "That's not possible," Hannah whispered. "There's more." Jinyu pulled up another video. This one showed the same man walking along a mountain path during a storm. Lightning struck a tree not 5 meters from him. But in the moment before the strike, the old man had moved not away from the lightning, but away from where the tree was about to fall. He had known. Somehow, he had known. More videos followed. A landslide that the old man had somehow redirected by pushing against the leading edge of the debris. A flood that had parted around his house while destroying everything else in its path. A fight with 3 young men who had tried to rob him on a road. They had ended up unconscious while he continued walking without a single mark on his body. "His name is Go Pilsu," Jinyu said. "He's 73 years old. He has never left Hadong province. He has no military training. He has no formal martial arts education. He has spent his entire life farming rice, fishing in the local rivers, and practicing a family fighting style that has no official name and no written records." Hannah stared at the screen. "How is this possible?" "We don't know. We've analyzed the footage 100 times. He doesn't move faster than a normal human. He doesn't show any signs of enhanced strength. But somehow, he's always in the right place at the right time. Somehow, he always knows what's going to happen before it happens." Hannah was quiet for a long time. She thought about all the candidates she had tested, the super soldiers and the athletes and the masters. They had trained for years, decades even, to reach the peak of human ability. But this old man, this farmer, had done something different. He had not trained to reach a peak. He had simply done the same things every single day for 60 years. And somehow, those 60 years had turned him into something that the testing machines could not measure. "Get me a helicopter," she said finally. "I'm going to Hadong." 3 hours later, she stood at the edge of Go Pilsu's rice paddy, watching him work in the early morning light. He moved like water, like wind, like something that had stopped being entirely human and become something older and deeper. He was not fast. He was not strong. He was something else entirely. He looked up at her approach, and his eyes were calm and clear, the eyes of a man who had nothing left to prove and nothing left to fear. "I was wondering when you would come," he said, and went back to his work. The arena was built in orbit above Earth, and it was beautiful in the way that weapons are beautiful, cold and precise, and designed for death. It was a sphere of transparent material that no human scientist could identify, floating in the darkness of space like a soap bubble made of starlight. Inside, the floor was smooth white stone, unmarked and perfect. The walls curved upward and became the ceiling and through them. The galaxy watched. Billions of beings from thousands of worlds had tuned their viewing devices to this moment. On planets of ice and fire, in space stations the size of moons, in ships traveling between stars, everyone was watching. The trial of humanity had become the greatest entertainment in 10,000 years. Go-Pilsu sat in a small room aboard the human transport ship, looking out a window at the stars. He had never been in space before. He had barely been outside his province before the military had come to his farm with their helicopters and their urgent requests. He was still wearing his farming clothes, the white cotton shirt, the dark work pants, the sandals he had owned for 15 years. They had offered him armor and weapons. He had refused. Colonel Yoon Hana sat across from him, studying his face for any sign of fear. She found none. "The Valorian elite are not like anything you have ever faced," she said for the 100th time. "They are 8 feet tall. Their bodies are partially mechanical. They have been engineered for combat since before their birth. Their bones are reinforced with metal. Their muscles are 3 times denser than human muscle. Their reaction time is measured in fractions of a second that our instruments cannot even detect." Pilsu nodded politely. He had heard all of this before. "They have never been defeated," Hannah continued. "Not once in 10,000 years. They have destroyed armies. They have conquered worlds. They have killed creatures that we cannot even imagine. And yet they die," Pilsu said quietly. Hannah blinked. "What? You said they have been fighting for 10,000 years? But I see only 5 of them going into the arena. Where are the others? The ones who came before?" He smiled, a small and gentle smile. "They die, Colonel. Everything dies. That is the one truth that does not change, no matter how far you travel from home." The ship docked with the arena, and the airlock opened onto a corridor of light. At the end of the corridor was the fighting floor. And standing on that floor were the 5 Valorian elite. Each one was a nightmare made flesh. They stood over 8 feet tall, their bodies a fusion of organic tissue and living metal. Their skin was gray and seamless, with visible joints where their mechanical components met their biological ones. Their eyes glowed with an inner light red, cold and utterly without mercy. They did not breathe. They did not blink. They simply stood, waiting, patient as stones. Their leader was designated Unit Prime. He was larger than the others, and his eyes burned brighter. In his hand he held a blade that seemed to be made of solidified darkness, a weapon that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. He looked at the airlock where the human champion would emerge, and his lips curled into something that might have been a smile. If it had contained any warmth at all, Ambassador Vorik's voice echoed through the arena, transmitted to every watching being in the galaxy. "People of the cosmos, today we witness the judgment of humanity. Their champion will face 5 Valorian elite in combat to the death. If the human wins, Earth goes free. If the human loses, Earth becomes a prison world forever." There was amusement in his voice, the lazy pleasure of someone watching a game whose outcome was already decided. "Let the champion come forth." The airlock opened, and Go-Pilsu walked into the arena. The silence that followed was absolute. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stared at their viewing devices in disbelief. They had expected a soldier in armor. They had expected a warrior carrying weapons. They had expected anything that looked capable of fighting. Instead, they saw an old man in farming clothes and worn sandals, walking slowly toward the center of the arena with his hands empty and his posture relaxed. He looked like someone's grandfather going to check on his crops. He looked like the least threatening being in the entire galaxy. Vorik's laughter boomed through the speakers. "This is your champion? This is the great hope of humanity. An old farmer?" Pilsu stopped in the center of the arena and looked up at the observation deck, where Vorik sat among the other council members. His eyes were calm, patient, undisturbed. "I am Go-Pilsu," he said, and his voice was soft, but somehow carried to every corner of the sphere. "I have farmed the same land for 60 years. I have planted rice in the spring and harvested it in the fall. I have watched the seasons change and the years pass. I have learned that the universe does not care about size or strength or technology. The universe cares only about truth, Unit Prime stepped forward, his blade humming with deadly energy. "And what truth have you learned, old man?" Pilsu looked at him, really looked at him, the way a farmer looks at the sky to understand the weather. The way a fisherman looks at the water to understand the fish. "That everything that rises must fall," he said. "That everything that is built must break. That the hardest steel can be worn away by the softest water if the water is patient enough." He paused, and his eyes seemed to look through Unit Prime, through the arena, through time itself. "Your masters built you to be perfect, but perfection is a lie. Perfection is a wall that cannot bend, and so it must shatter. I am not perfect. I am not strong. I am not fast. I am only patient. I am only persistent. I am only here." He bowed a small, polite bow, the bow of a man greeting guests in his home. "My grandson's rice needs planting next week," he said. "Let us begin." Unit Prime raised his blade, and the other 4 elites spread out to surround the old man. The galaxy held its breath, and then, faster than thought, the killing began. Unit Prime moved first. He was fast, so fast that the human eye could not track his movement. One moment he was standing 10 meters away. The next moment his blade was cutting through the air where Pilsu's neck had been. But Pilsu was not there. He had not dodged in any way that made sense. He had not jumped, or ducked, or blocked. He had simply moved, the way water moves when you push it, the way smoke moves when wind blows. He was standing 2 steps to the left, exactly where he needed to be, and his hand was resting lightly on Unit Prime's extended arm. "You telegraph your movements," Pilsu said quietly. "Your shoulders tense before you strike. Your eyes focus on where you want to hit. Your feet shift to prepare for the motion. You think these things happen too fast for anyone to see, but they do not happen too fast for anyone to feel." Unit Prime pulled back, his processors struggling to understand what had happened. He was designed to analyze combat in real time, to predict enemy movements, to counter any attack before it was completed. But his systems had not predicted this. His systems had not even detected this. The old man had simply not been where he was supposed to be. The second elite attacked from behind. Her name was Unit 7, and she was the fastest of the 5. She moved like lightning, her claws extended, aiming for Pilsu's spine. Pilsu stepped to the side and guided her past him with a gentle touch to her shoulder. It was the same motion he used to direct water through irrigation channels, easy, natural, requiring no force at all. Unit 7 stumbled, her momentum carrying her forward into Unit Prime. They collided and fell together. The 3rd and 4th elites attacked at the same time, Unit 3 from the left and Unit 9 from the right. Their coordination was perfect, developed over centuries of training together. They struck as one, leaving no space for escape. Pilsu scattered seeds. That was what it looked like, at least. His hands moved in the wide, sweeping motion of a farmer spreading grain across a field. His fingertips touched each elite's incoming fist, redirecting the energy by fractions of a degree. The 2 warriors passed through the space where Pilsu had been and crashed into each other. The 5th elite. Unit 12 hung back, watching, analyzing. He was the youngest of the group, and he had been designed as an adaptive fighter, one who could learn from any opponent. But he had never seen anything like this. The old man was not fighting. He was not defending. He was simply existing in a way that made combat impossible. "What are you?" Unit 12 asked. Pilsu turned to look at him. The old man was not breathing hard. He was not sweating. He looked exactly as he had looked when he walked into the arena, calm, patient, utterly at peace. "I am a farmer," he said. "My father was a farmer. His father before him. We have worked the same land for 23 generations. I woke before dawn this morning, as I have woken before dawn every morning for 60 years. I stretched my body, as I have stretched it every morning. I ate a simple breakfast, as I have eaten every morning. And then I came here to do what needed to be done." Unit Prime rose from the floor, his systems finally stabilizing. "You are not faster than us. Our sensors confirm this. You are not stronger than us. Our measurements prove this. How are you avoiding our attacks?" Pilsu considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. When I was young, he began, I was impatient. I wanted to plant quickly, to harvest quickly, to do everything quickly so I could rest. But my father told me something that I did not understand until I was old. He said that rushing is the enemy of mastery. He said that if I did the same thing every day, without hurrying, without cutting corners, eventually I would stop doing the thing and the thing would start doing me. He paused, watching as the 5 elites regrouped and surrounded him again. I did not understand, but I listened. Every day I woke before dawn. Every day I walked to the fields. Every day I bent and rose, planting and pulling and cutting and carrying. The same movements, the same rhythms, year after year after year. Unit 3 attacked again, and Pilsu deflected her strike with the motion of pulling weeds, a small twist of the wrist, a shift of weight from one foot to the other. After 10 years, I stopped thinking about the movements. They happen without thought. After 20 years, I stopped thinking about the tools. The hoe became part of my arm. After 30 years, I stopped thinking about the land. I knew where every stone was, where every stream ran, where every shadow fell at every hour of the day. Unit 9 threw a punch that could shatter concrete. Pilsu caught his fist in both hands the way he caught fish in the river gently. Without violence, redirecting force rather than opposing it, Unit 9 flew past him and hit the wall. After 40 years, I stopped thinking about myself. There was no Go Pilsu working the fields. There was only the work, the motion, the eternal dance between the farmer and the farm. After 50 years, I stopped thinking about time. Every moment was every other moment. Every day was every other day. Past and present and future became one thing. One endless now. Unit Prime attacked with everything he had. Speed, strength, precision. 10,000 years of engineered perfection concentrated into a single killing blow. His blade screamed through the air, leaving a trail of darkness behind it. Pilsu caught the blade between 2 fingers. The arena fell completely silent. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stared in disbelief, as an old man in farming clothes stopped the most advanced weapon in existence with the same motion he used to catch. Grasshoppers that threatened his crops, your engineers, gave you 10,000 years of combat knowledge, Pilsu said, his voice gentle, almost sad. They built you in laboratories. They grew you in vats. They filled your minds with techniques and strategies and calculations. You are perfect. You have always been perfect. You have never known failure or pain or uncertainty. He released the blade and stepped back. But I was built by 10,000 mornings, by the weight of water and the patience of seasons, by the death of crops and the struggle for survival, by failure after failure after failure, until failure became my teacher and my friend. Your perfection is a wall. My imperfection is a river, and the river always wins. Unit Prime's eyes flickered. His systems were overheating, unable to process what was happening. Nothing in his 10,000 years of programming had prepared him for this. Cannot be defeated, he said, but his voice wavered. Everything can be defeated, Pilsu replied. Everything ends. Everything falls. That is not tragedy. That is truth. And those who accept the truth are stronger than those who deny it. He looked at the 5 elites, these warriors who had never known defeat, who had conquered worlds, who had been designed to be invincible. And he felt something unexpected. He felt pity. You were made for war, he said softly. But you were never taught to live. You were built to destroy, but you were never taught to create. You have 10,000 years of combat, but not one day of peace. That is not strength. That is poverty. That is the saddest thing I have ever seen. He raised his hands not to fight, but to invite. Come, he said. Let me show you what you are missing. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Later, scholars across the galaxy would study those 4 minutes frame by frame, trying to understand what had happened. They would write papers and theories, and entire books attempting to explain how a single, unarmed human had defeated 5 of the most advanced warriors in existence. they would never fully succeed. What they saw was this: an old man moving through a storm of violence, like a leaf on the wind. Blades passed through spaces he had just vacated. Fists struck air where his body should have been. Kicks swept through emptiness. And through it all, Pilsu kept moving, not fast, never fast, but always correctly. Always exactly where he needed to be. He did not strike. He did not attack. He simply redirected Unit 3's killing blow. Became a collision with Unit 7. Unit 9's devastating kick became a tumble into the wall. Unit 12's coordinated assault became a tangle of mechanical limbs and confused processors. And Unit Prime, the greatest of them all, the warrior who had conquered 600 worlds, found himself repeatedly hitting nothing. Overextending, losing balance, falling. Every motion Pilsu made was borrowed from 60 years of farming. The sweep of his arm was the swing of a scythe. The shift of his feet was the careful step through muddy paddies. The twist of his body was the motion of throwing fishing nets. He was not fighting. He was harvesting. When the last elite fell Unit Prime crashing to the floor with a sound like thunder, the arena was silent. Pilsu stood alone in the center, surrounded by 5 unconscious warriors. He was not breathing hard. His clothes were not torn. He had a small cut on his forearm where Unit Prime's blade had finally touched him, a wound that would have killed an ordinary man but had only broken. His skin, he examined the cut with mild interest, then shrugged. He had received worse from stubborn bamboo. Ambassador Vorik sat frozen in the observation deck, his 6 eyes wide with an emotion his species had not felt in millennia: fear. The Galactic Council had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years because they controlled the Valorian elite. Their warriors were unbeatable. Their warriors were invincible. Their warriors were the foundation upon which all their power was built. And that foundation had just crumbled. The viewing devices across the galaxy erupted with noise. Species that had been conquered by the Council began to murmur about revolution. Species that had been considering submission suddenly reconsidered, and everywhere, on every world, beings looked at their screens and saw the same impossible truth: a human farmer in worn sandals, standing victorious over the greatest warriors in existence. Pilsu looked up at the observation deck. His eyes met Vorik's, and there was no hatred in them. No triumph. No anger. There was only patience, the eternal patience of someone who watched seasons change and years pass and understood that everything eventually finds its proper place. The trial is over, Pilsu said. Earth goes free. Vorik opened his mouth to protest, to claim treachery, to demand a rematch. But before he could speak, the other council members turned their eyes toward him. They were afraid, now afraid of what this meant, afraid of the power shift that was coming, afraid most of all of the elderly human who had shattered their certainty with nothing but empty hands and quiet wisdom. Earth goes free, Vorik repeated, his voice hollowed. The transport ship that carried Pilsu back to the surface was escorted by vessels from 12 different species beings, who had suddenly become very interested in alliance with humanity. Ambassadors who had ignored Earth for centuries were now desperate to make contact. Trade offers, military partnerships, technological exchanges, all were being frantically proposed before the ship even landed. Colonel Yoon Hannah met Pilsu at the landing pad. Behind her stood the world's leaders, presidents and prime ministers, generals and scientists, all waiting to thank the man who had saved their civilization. There were medals to give and speeches to make and celebrations to attend. Pilsu looked at them all with polite patience, then turned to Hannah. I would like to go home now, he said. There will be ceremonies, Hannah replied. Recognition. The whole world wants to thank you. Pilsu nodded slowly. They can thank me by leaving me alone. I have work to do. Work. You just saved humanity. You defeated the most advanced warriors in the galaxy. You changed the course of history. The old man smiled, the same gentle smile he had worn throughout the battle, throughout the testing, throughout all the chaos that had disrupted his quiet life. I planted rice this morning, he said. In 30 days, it will need to be checked. In 60 days, it will need to be tended. In 90 days, it will need to be harvested. These things do not stop because history has changed. The rice does not care about the galaxy. The fish do not care about the Valorian elite. Seasons do not wait for ceremonies. He began walking toward the helicopter that would take him back to Hadong. You asked me how I defeated them? He said over his shoulder. I will tell you the truth. I did not defeat them. They defeated themselves. They were built to fight opponents who fight back. They were programmed to counter techniques and strategies and attacks, but I did not give them any of those things. I simply did what I have always done. I moved with the moment, not against it. I accepted what came instead of resisting it. I was water, and they were stone, and water always wins. He reached the helicopter door and paused. Your super soldiers were made for war. They were designed for destruction. Every part of them was engineered to kill. But humans, real humans, ordinary humans, we were not made for war. We were made for survival, for adaptation, for getting up every morning, no matter how hard the day before. That is our strength. Not weapons, not modifications, not engineered perfection. Just the stubborn, beautiful, impossible refusal to stop. He climbed into the helicopter. Now, if you will excuse me. The rice will not plant itself. The helicopter rose into the sky and turned toward the mountains, toward the green fields and quiet rivers of Hadong. Inside, Gopilsu watched the world pass below him and thought about the work waiting at home. There would be weeds to pull, and channels to clear, and tools to sharpen. There would be fish to catch, and vegetables to tend and tea. To drink in the evening quiet. The galaxy had learned something about humanity today. They had learned that humans were not weak because they lacked genetic modifications. They had learned that humans were not helpless because they lacked advanced technology. They had learned that somewhere in the long chain of human survival, in the 10,000 years of struggling against nature and each other and themselves, humanity had developed something that no laboratory could create and no army could defeat. They had developed the ability to endure, and in the end, that was enough. Back on his farm, watching the sun set over the mountains, Gopilsu picked up his hoe and returned to work. Tomorrow, there would be more to do. There was always more to do. And that, more than anything else, was what it meant to be human.